Want to just there we go. Good. Okay, good. We are recording this, so feel free to, and we'll send you the link after the sessions so that you can review whatever we're talking about here. But I want to do a quick shout out to the Global Chamber, Doug, in particular here for yeah, sending this out, the invitation to your community, to the Global Chamber community. We're thrilled to be partnering with the chamber here as we go forward. We've got some stuff that I think is going to be very interesting for the members. And that being said, we're going to just jump into this. Dolan, we've got a couple of slides here that we're not going to bore you. Guaranteed, we're not going to bore you with a whole slide deck.
Yes,
But we
we've
do have
come
some referencing material here.
we've come prepared with at least 600 slides, at least. All right, let me share. I'm going to share my deck.
Just in case we need to cover something.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to do it in an unelegant manner. So a lot of times Blaine and I have a tendency when we do these challenges. First of all, is thank you for being here. Always thank you for being here. Just a sense of gratitude. But we always just, I don't like sharing my whole screen and going through all of that just because I can't see everybody when that happens. And this is really an opportunity for us to be together and interact and learn from each other this week. So I will share it in an unelegant manner, but it shows you that yes, there are slides for today that we're going to talk about. So
We'll skip some, we'll do some.
yeah, exactly. And it's all well rehearsed. So it just depends upon the mood at the moment. So let's get started. And I'll we can watch the door, Blaine,
Yeah,
as people come in, and
people come in, I'll just pop them in here.
there you go. You want to start with this one, Mr. Bartlett?
Yeah. Well, there's two things here. One is why you might be here, and another one is to be kind of clear about what the contextual frame for this challenge actually is.
Hmm.
So, we do Dolan and I conduct a leadership mastermind, and it's a mindset mastermind, and we do two of them a year. So this particular challenge is a kind of a overview of what you could expect to see in the mastermind, and we define leadership in two ways here. One is that it's an art. The other one is that it's a science. There's an art and a science to being able to lead effectively in any organizational situation. So we're going to be over the course of the next 5 days, and we got a full blueprint here, roadmap that we'll be walking you through here in just a minute here. But that's for us. What we want to do is provide a basis for you to have a framing of how leadership can be understood with the intent of enhancing your effectiveness and impact. And in both of our careers, and we'll give you an real brief bio of both of us in just a minute here. But yeah, how do you scale an organization? Yeah, and taking it to where it's never been before. In order to do that, you can't just be a better leader. You've got to be a different leader, a different kind of leader. And that's what we're going to be talking about is how do you go about becoming a different kind of leader? And in the process of that, obviously, you enhance your skill set and whatnot. Why you might be here, these are just some bullet points here that seem to come out of conversations we've had with folks about why did you show up to one of these things, and we do these challenges about every 6 weeks or so. Gain clarity on your leadership vision. Divine. I'm not going to read them, but you can kind of get a sense of why you might be here. Empower your team for sustainable growth. Check that box. Lead with resilience and adaptability. In today's economic climate, there is so much uncertainty about what do we do. And burnout is an interesting concept that comes into play here.
Yeah.
This is where resilience actually plays a big part. Burnout is a consequence not of working too hard. It's a consequence of losing connection to purpose, to meaning. And so with your teams and with your organizations, if you've got burnout going on, and I spend a lot of time working in hospital systems, that's one of the areas I'm on the teaching faculty of the American Association for Physician Leadership. And burnout is a big deal in the medical field right now. And it's about losing connection to why did I get into medicine in the first place? Yeah. And for these docs in particular, they lose connection with that when they're, jumping through the insurance loophole, hoops, all of the stuff that they need to handle with that, all the paperwork. So resilience and adaptability, how do we pivot? And then faster innovation and future proofing your business. Now, future proofing is kind of a loaded concept here. You're never going to actually future proof it, but you can pay
No.
attention to some very specific things that can give you and your team ways to, and it goes back up to adaptability, to actually shift quickly if you need to shift quickly, which is where innovation comes into play. And this is where the art of leadership actually is a pretty significant piece. So that's kind of our take on, based on interviews we've done about why people actually attend these challenges, why people might show up, and be interested to see from you if there's anything here that might be different than what we've identified here. Yeah, and then, by the way, this is going to be participative. We're not just
Yeah.
talking heads here. We're going to be asking questions, and we would certainly encourage you to give us some answers.
Yeah, this is a family call.
So why'd you show up outside of Mark sent out or Doug sent out a note saying show up? Anybody?
I'm
Yeah,
in
Gene?
a
Gene?
I'm in a
Yeah.
transition at this point in my career. Um, and the last two roles, if I look in the mirror with transparency, I chose to leave because I was not a fit for the leadership that I reported to. So I'd like just a leadership tune-up, if you will, around my own perspectives about what to expect from a leader and how I can be a good supporter of a leader
All right.
even when I might
Great.
not, you know, really want to work for them.
Yeah, yeah. Been there, done that for
Yeah,
sure,
great.
for sure. Jill, you had your hand up.
Yeah, come on, Jill.
Yeah. Well, I miss being in the leadership mastermind and dedicating time during my day, during my week, to specific study in a group and just kind of recalibrating who I am as a leader, no matter where that happens to be, Gene, wherever I am, wherever, whatever I'm doing, just that self leadership and being in the study. And so I'm really glad to be back in the company and the fellowship of strong, powerful leaders.
Great. And just for
Thank you.
those of you that are listening here, Jill is a graduate, quote unquote graduate. She's participated, yeah, in the mastermind. As a
Yes.
matter of fact, we've got some folks in the mastermind program that have been in it for 4 years now.
Yeah.
They keep coming back on an annual basis, and part of that has to do with deeper dives, greater understanding, greater clarity about kind of how do I apply this. So. And at least that's my take on it. I'm assuming it's not because we didn't give them something.
Yeah, maybe, right? And thank you, Jill, for the shameless plug. And Jill is she's also one of the mentors for cohorts. So we'll talk about all that stuff in a little bit. Let's want to take just a moment. Let's talk about the days that are ahead and the kind of the flow of what we're going to be covering. And today we're going to be focusing on discovering our why. And this is the day where Blaine and I talk the most. And the rest of the week we talk much less than we'll talk today. But today we're going to talk about models and we'll do some activities around discovering our why. Tomorrow we're going to talk about dimensions of leadership. And when we talk about dimensions of leadership, we're going to do a little self-assessment and have a chance to look at kind of where we are as leaders and what muscles we need to work on. On Wednesday, we talk about leading through change, which is resiliency. It's that conversation around building resiliency. On Thursday, we begin to talk about an integrative approach to leadership, which is leading from the top. The top. We'll talk about our leadership, the definition of leadership today. Talk from definition of leadership all the way out to the other side. And then Friday, we'll spend time. How do you take all of the content that we talked about Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and how does all this blend together so that you have an opportunity to go apply it? And one of the things that we'll give you on Friday as a part of our exit is everybody's will get not only you'll get all the notes as the week goes on, all of the PDFs again from the worksheets, all of the slides that we go through. It's about a 9-pound PDF, but you also get a 30-day plan on how to take what we talk about here for the next 4 days. The fifth day is how do we integrate? How do we turn that into an action? Because leaders take action, and then go apply that. So we'll send you away with, you thought this was a 5-day challenge. We're going to give you 30 more days on top of it so you can go apply it. And that's what the week is going to look like. The flow, what you can expect is, as Blaine mentioned, this is a working challenge. So every day there's a worksheet and there's a couple of handouts and other things because Blaine and I, when we first started doing these last year, gosh, this is number 5. And the thing we wanted to do was be able to provide you with tools that you could go away with and think through not once, but several times to be able to use the tool in a repetitive way so that you could come back to it in 30 days and come back and revisit your definition of why, what inspires you. We'll get into all of that a little bit today. At each day, we're going to try to keep it to about an hour. We say 75 minutes in here generally because Blaine and I were laughing over coffee this morning before this. It's not you guys that are out of control. It's generally Blaine and I that are out of control. And it's hard for us to go an hour, but we're going to try to respect your time and do an hour. There will be breakouts and we will have suggested homework. So we're going to put you into breakout groups each of the days, and the breakouts will go 10 minutes or so, but it's an opportunity for us to meet each other and really experience not just a 5-day challenge, but the power of a mastermind and how we work together. So our serious intention is we're not going to slideshow you to death. We will on Friday talk about our mastermind, but it will be after the challenge, and we'll tell you more about that as the week goes on. But it will during the body of this 5-day challenge. This is we will not be selling you things, we'll talk about this. You'll hear us say that we talk about this in the mastermind. We'll tell you all about the mastermind Friday when we're done. But during the course of this week, we really want to focus on the content of the challenge, the opportunity for us to work together and sharpen our saw just a skosh. That's a technical term, skosh, by the way. So that's really what the flow looks like for this week.
So you might be wondering who we are and why you would want to listen to us.
Yeah, you go first. You're
Okay.
tough.
Well, it says that I'm a distinguished leadership coach, author, and speaker.
Yeah.
But my background, it's literally 4 decades, over four decades. I've worked in the area of leadership development with some of the most fascinating people in the world. And I've worked in just literally every market sector that you can imagine: telecom, medicine, petrochemical, pharmaceutical, finance. I mean, yeah, you name the sector, and I've probably done some work with somebody in that field. I'm an adjunct professor at Beijing University, and that role has me talking about literally the power of culture in an organizational setting. I mentioned I'm on the teaching faculty of the American Association for Physician Leadership, and the primary program that I developed and work with them on is one that I co-developed with a group out of Harvard, is around leadership authenticity. What does it mean to be authentic in a leadership role? Clients I've worked with, probably the one that's most familiar, there's a lot of them, would be Nokia. I started with them back in the mid 1990s and ended up developing a major chunk of their leadership development curriculum and taught it for them as an external consultant for about 12 years. And I mentioned that one in particular because a lot of what you're going to be seeing us talk about this week, and also a lot of what's in the mastermind program, is work that I've done with these kinds of clients to test, the efficacy and the applicability of the models that we're going to be looking at. some of the smallest companies. I mean, I've got a chain of sushi restaurants in Japan that have been with me for a number of years. I've trained all of their senior managers. And goodness gracious, I'm a grandfather. I got 4 grandkids. Not that that necessarily, well, it actually does kind of qualify me to be a leader in some way, shape, or form, I think. Uh, Written 5 books on leadership and coaching. One of them is an international bestseller, the one you see over my shoulder here, Compassionate Capitalism, A Journey to the Soul of Business. And it's that soul that we speak about. And you're going to see this in one of the models that we're going to be talking about in a little bit. So that's kind of who I am. I've spent a vast majority of my life, working with leaders, senior leaders, executives in organizations, and I've got a pretty good, I think, finger on the pulse of what makes a leader, particularly a highly effective leader. So we'll be bringing that expertise to the table. And then my partner in crime here, Dr. White.
Yeah, so the biggest difference between Blaine and I is he's distinguished and apparently I'm seasoned. Not sure what that means, but I'm seasoned.
We're gonna
And
tip of the hat to our PR people here.
I know being seasoned, but you know, so I have I'll go short on this so we can get rolling. But it's 40 years of experience. I've been a chief executive officer a couple of times, started my career early and as president and chief executive officer for an international services company. Um, Blaine and I were talking last week about the fact that I got it through that, got a chance to play chess with Gary Kasparov and eat a lot of chocolate doing that. Another day, another story. And spent a lot of years inside of about 30 years inside of the software services business, leading global teams. Had an opportunity to travel the world. One of the things that we recognized was the need for developing what we called at the time professionalism and ethics, which really was leadership on our teams and in the teams of our partners. And so I was blessed, got a chance to travel to, I don't know, 14, 15 countries and teach a couple of thousand people about what ultimately became called leadership in my mind. Met Blaine, oh gosh, 12, 13 years ago with Bob Proctor. And as part of that, I was chief executive officer for a marketing company at the time. And very fast became friends with Blaine through his wife, Cynthia Kersey, who's runs the Unstoppable Foundation. And in working with Blaine, it was a chance to ask Cynthia, I really like that guy on stage. Can I meet him? And she said, yeah, I'd sleep with him. So Blaine and I have been friends ever since. The My previous role, chief operations officer for a large training organization, and over the last couple of years have been coaching executives. April 1st, 2024, I officially retired, launched a podcast, wrote a book, doing executive coaching. My wife reminds me periodically that I am supposed to be retired, and have four grandkids, 2 great grandchildren, so I can throw that out there, and that's a little bit about kind of a little bit of married almost 40 years, somewhere around there. My wife will correct me on the years later, I'm sure.
Add a zero there, 40 years.
40 years, yeah, 40, yeah, not 40, a long time. So so our intention, by the way, the reason why through the introduction, there's a lot of introductions that you guys, people will go out and you go to an event or go to a mastermind or you hear people give an introduction. The reason why this is important, and we want to give you a little bit of our background, is because it's kind of boils down to been there, done that. So we've had an opportunity to go do some great things, do some good things, and mess a couple things up across the body of our careers. And I'll talk a little bit about messing stuff up in my career today. But as we go through that, we really want to make sure that our intention is pure and that how do we leverage the experience that we have, the knowledge that we've gained over the years in leading people and leading organizations to scale and success. How do we help you apply that so we can help you shorten that path? How do we help you do that? And so that's what we're going to focus on. We're at least going to give you a taste of that in these next 5 days.
Yeah.
Doctor?
Yeah. each of us has got, aggregated, we've got about 90 years worth of experience, doing leadership work. There are a body of lies that people will tell themselves that limit how effective they can be. And they literally are lies in our experience. One of them, and this one is probably, one of the lodestone ones. Yeah, people keep coming back to this one. Maintaining strict control over decisions and outcomes. I'm the boss. I need to be the decider. I'm the decider. Um, when you're looking at the possibility of scaling your business, this one is going to compromise you very quickly. I must maintain strict control. Now, there's a whole body of information that begins to get developed when we start looking at this, because this is rooted in a mindset. It's rooted in a very specific mindset that oftentimes is not explored fruitfully. So this is one lie that can be disabused if you're working with it with intention. Um, Kind of hand in glove with that goes, I have to be, seen it as invulnerable. Another way of saying that is, don't let them see you sweat. Yeah, don't let them see you sweat. Yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, present this facade of
Yeah.
absolute certainty. Now, the problem with this is people don't connect with certainty; they connect with vulnerability. And if all you're doing is showing complete certainty at all time, there's no way for people to actually bring something new to the table, which can really compromise your ability as an organization to innovate and grow. Focus on outcomes. Outcomes are all there is. I am my results. Yeah. This is a very common one. I am my results. And as a consequence of that, we get people focusing extraordinary amounts of energy on that endpoint to the neglect of the process that is getting us there. And the process has to do with the relational dynamic that's in play. The relational dynamic that's in play. And I'm going to talk about that in just a minute here. What do I mean by relational dynamic? Well, everything, all an organization is a collection of people in relationship. That's all any organization is at the end of the day. Collection of people that are in relationship. Yeah. Yeah, most people will think of the interpersonal relationships. That's the tip of the iceberg. There are relationships with processes, with goals and objectives, the relationship that people have with the values of the organization, the relationship they have with the chair they're sitting in. I mean, the relationship with parking places. To the degree that these relationships are working well, you got a pretty good shot at being successful. If any of these relationships start going sideways, your ability to execute gets compromised. And most leaders do not pay attention to the relational dynamic in their organization. It's a process question. It's a systems question. They're focused on the outcome. And because they are blinded by that focus, they miss opportunities to actually tweak and tune that allows them to scale more effectively. Number 4 is tied back into number 1. Make every decision independently. This one has less credibility today when we look at the fact that we've got 5 different generations in the workforce today. The first time in history we've had 5 generations in a workforce.
Yeah.
And these people all have different expectations about how decisions are made and how they're included in not only the making of the decisions, but the execution of the decisions. And then the final piece here has to do with avoiding feedback. Yeah, I was on stage with Ken Blanchard a number of years ago in Copenhagen. And Ken Blanchard, the 1-minute manager, situational awareness or situational leadership. Yeah, his comment to me was feedback is the breakfast of champions. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. And if you're not actively and intentionally going out of your way to solicit feedback, not so much about how I'm showing up, but how are we doing? What's working? What's not working? That kind of feedback is the kind of feedback that we want to have access to on an ongoing basis. If I've got a barrier there, avoiding feedback because I'm afraid it's going to reflect on my inadequacy. If I go to somebody and say, give me some feedback, how I frame that question makes a big difference. a huge difference in the quality of the information I get back in return. So these lies will, trip us up, and there's more than these 5, obviously. But these are the ones that kind of reflect the tip of the iceberg in the interviews that we've done. And these interviews, I mean, I've literally worked with over 300,000 people in my career, and these seem to crop up more often than not. So that's kind of where we're at with this.
Yeah. And we'll have fun with these as the week goes on. You'll hear these come, we'll mention these again as kind of each day as we're delving through content. The I'm sure in there these are from just as a we've been talking for a few minutes, just as a reality check for everybody. Have you heard these lies before, or ever felt these lies or experienced these lies before? Just raise your hand or give a thumbs up, Gene, Susie. Yeah, absolutely. So these are things that we experience when we're working, and to Blaine's point, people in a group of relationships, it'd be a lot easier to lead without people. It's just much easier. So we'll take a few minutes and just talk a little bit about, and you'll hear us, we're going to talk about this definition daily in context of the conversation that we're having for the day. So, Blaine, you want to start it, and then
Yeah.
I'll come back to the 5 pieces.
Over the 40 plus years that I was working, I wrestled with how do I define leadership? And I basically parsed it down to two things here. One has to do with what is a leader. And the other one is then what does a leader do, which is the leadership question. A leader is anybody that causes movement. Now you strip away personality, you strip away characteristics. You mean at the end of the day, whether you're Genghis Khan or Mother Teresa, you're causing movement. Okay, that's what a leader does. They cause things to change. They cause things to shift. The question is never, am I a leader? By definition, everybody's a leader. Everybody is, because you can't interact in an environment and not cause movement. It's just not possible. People are going to move with you or away from you, towards you, or whatever. You're going to cause movement of some sort. The question here has to do with effectiveness. Am I causing the kind of movement I need to get the result I say I want? That's a question of effectiveness. And that's where this definition comes into play here, because that is the quintessential focus of leadership. Leadership is the activity of influencing others in order to co-create coordinated movement in pursuit of a worthy ideal. So when you parse this down, remember I talked about at the very beginning here, the science and the art of leadership. The art of leadership is embedded in this notion of influence. How do I influence others? You can, oftentimes this gets referenced as the leadership presence. Okay, that kind of a context. My state of being, how I show up. This influencing component has to do with what kind of movement do I generate before I ever open my mouth. What's that energetic that is being communicated into the system that people begin to subconsciously and subliminally begin to interact with and move around? Then we move into co-creating coordinated movement. Co-creation, I'm going to split these two apart here. Co-creation is about ownership transfer. I have an idea that I want to have produced out there in the world. Okay, if it's my idea, it's going to be real difficult to do it. If it's our idea, now we've got a basis for making something happen. So co-creation is about ownership transfer. And this is where the science of leadership starts to come into play. How do I actually begin to move it from my mind into your mind and heart? When we can co-create together, now we have something that is different than compliance. We now have commitment as a metric. And then the coordinated movement, when you start moving into territory you've never been before, which is part of what scaling an organization makes possible, you start moving into new places, new ways of doing, new ways of thinking and being. You don't have a safe idea or an idea of the safe path. So it's guaranteed you're going to be stepping on each other's toes. Absolutely guaranteed that you're going to step on each other's toes. So how do you coordinate movement knowing that that is going to be the case? And here's the kernel of the golden nugget on this one is It has to do with how you literally utilize conflict, not eliminate conflict, but utilize it. Conflict, another word for conflict is friction. And everybody just, this is participation time here. Rub your hands together. Just rub your hands together. And you start to feel some heat. That's what's going on with conflict. It generates heat. Heat will clean things. And enough heat will also generate light. So you want to be able to use conflict as kind of a mechanism by which you shed light on new possibilities, and you generate enough heat that you can burn away things that don't need to be there any longer.
Mhm.
Now, how you manage that process there's a science to that. Okay. You don't want to just have a bonfire. You want to be able to control that process. And then the final piece here has to do with pursuit of a worthy ideal. And this goes back into the nature of why people move in the first place. All behavior is predicated on meaning. How I describe something determines how I feel about it. How I feel about it generates my behavior. Anybody that's ever been married or had a long-term partner in their life and has tried to change that other person's behavior, good luck. Nope, it doesn't work. If you can change the description process, you begin to change how they feel about what's going on, which generates new behavior. And Gene, I'm thinking about how you think about the boss that you don't like to work with. How I
Right.
describe it to myself, can literally begin to shift that emotional state, which will generate a different kind of behavior. So these kind of things begin to come in play. And this is mindset work. This is where that actually takes place. The worthy ideal goes back into the co-creation piece. Why is it meaningful to me?
Mhm.
Okay, that's what we look at. And we're going to really unbundle this over the course of the next 5 days. So that's
Yeah.
just the brief overview. Not so brief, but it was an overview of kind of how this definition comes into play.
Yeah, we'll be spending a lot of time in this. So one thing that I'll challenge you through the week to think about is when you are heading into conversations, or you're contemplating a strategy, or you're thinking about your team, to pull the pieces out of this and ask yourself. And I just made a note. I had made a note last time, Blaine, that I would create a worksheet for this. So I'll create a worksheet today for this.
Good.
But ask yourself, who is it that I'm influencing? Who are the others? What is the influence that I'm intending? Because it will help you understand how you show up. Blaine said that in passing, but how are you showing up? And who do you have to be? I've got my little Superman dude on my desk. We'll talk about him another day. And then who are the others? What is it that you're looking to co-create? What is the coordination involved, and what's ultimately the movement that you're moving forward with? And then we'll talk about the pursuit of a worthy ideal. But use these points as it's not just about defining who we are as leadership, because it's cool to have a definition, but then how do you take the pieces and apply them into applied leadership to move towards that worthy ideal? And it requires some thinking and requires some exercise to actually sit down and do that, and do it frequently. I'll promise you guys, I'll give you guys a worksheet tomorrow that you can use on that. But let's go to where the ideal. Let's talk about what that, for the sake of what?
Yeah. When we're talking about worthy ideal, and this is another piece that we're going to come back to on a very frequent basis here.
Every
When we're
day.
looking at worthy ideal, it's kind of like, Simon Sinek has got, his world famous uh, TED talk on why. Start with why. Well, here's the
Yeah.
problem with why. It tends to be omnidirectional, first of all, and people will confuse why with purpose. And there's just some stuff that goes on, and I love what he did with that. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love Simon's work. But what
Yeah.
we're looking at here from a leadership perspective is being able to answer the question, and this is where co-creation comes into play here. For the sake of what are we doing this? For the sake of what is this worthy ideal actually worthy? This goal, this objective. The question that I like to play in people's minds, when I'm working with them on a one-on-one basis, is why does that matter to you as a team, as an individual? Why does that matter to you? And that answer has nothing to do with revenue. That answer has nothing to do with market share. This is at a personal level. What do you get to have, do, or be as a consequence of achieving this that you wouldn't get to have, do, or be if we didn't do that? That begins to open up a very interesting conversational box where you begin to look at how do we actually collaborate and co-create to make that happen in an organization. And this is something that I did with Nokia as an example here. I mean, I literally trained over close to 4,000 of their senior managers over the course of the 12 years that I was working with them. This question of why does that matter to you was singularly powerful for keeping people in place. Singularly powerful. Why does that matter to you? And it literally translated into personal agendas. So if you've got an organization, just think about this. If you've got an organization of 10 people, I'll just kind of keep it bite size here. If you ask this question, you are likely to get 10 very different answers, which is wonderful. It really is wonderful. They are all in service of that one targeted goal, that objective. But now you have people that have skin in the game. You now have people that this matters to me, not because you're going to get a 10% bump in revenue. It matters to me because now I get to experiment with some stuff I've never thought that I could bring to the table before. That's really kind of cool for me. I mean, all of that stuff starts to come into play and it becomes the worthy ideal. That becomes the worthy ideal. You can never tell somebody what the worthy ideal is. You have to ask them. And oftentimes you have to ask 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times because they're not used to being asked that question.
Yeah, not a common question.
So we're gonna play with that. This is an area that we spend a lot of time with in the mastermind groups. Why are you doing this?
And we'll be living in this every day.
Yeah.
Instead of the worthy ideal. So let's.
How do we go about doing it?
Yeah. So just for the sake of time, because we're going to spend some time in this. When Blaine and I work with our clients, there was reference models that we use, and they've been developed across. I think he reminds me periodically. It's probably because, although my hair is whiter than his hair, because we've been at this for almost 90 years. But the reference models, and we'll talk about these. These are the models that we use in conjunction together when we're working with our clients together, or there we go. I'll let Bill back in. When we are serving from a coaching perspective. So I'm going to start with just a brief conversation around the leadership universe, because we'll be visiting this universe daily in different aspects, and then we'll want to get into our work for today. So this is our framework.
This leadership universe, and it is a universe. This is where leaders work. This is when I talk about systems, a system, an awareness of a system, what's going on in the system.
Mm-hmm.
Almost all leadership development work is organized around these top 3 levels. And literally why, what, and how. Why is vision. Strategy. How is tactics. This is where almost exclusively the developmental work is done in most organizations when they're looking at how do we develop our leaders. Let's be sure that they understand how to develop and articulate vision. How do we actually isolate an effective strategy? And then once we've got the strategy locked in, what are the tactical components? And then what are the KPIs that we're going to bring to bear so that we can actually assess how we're doing, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. That's where the body of work is almost exclusively done in most leadership development scenarios. The real power is when we start dropping into mindset and eventually into soul or spirit. And I'm going to talk about those 2 words here in just a minute here. But mindset, by the time we're about 30 plus years of age, and this is true universally for the human beings that inhabit this planet, about 95% of our behavior is hardwired. And what I mean by that is we have got belief systems, value structures, we've got experiences, we've got societal mores that we've been kind of integrated into our sense of who we are. Who am I? All of that stuff kind of gets hardwired in our minds. And when we set a direction for ourselves, it requires somebody to do something, requires me to do something. The governing process, 95% of it is out of sight, out of mind.
Mhm.
It's that 95% that is actually driving behavior, despite best intentions. This is why changing somebody's behavior is difficult. Changing my behavior, New Year's Eve, I'm gonna, lose 15 pounds and I'm gonna go to the gym, 3 times a week. Yeah, by February 1st, where's that donut? The behavior hasn't shifted because there's something going on subliminally in the background. 95%, and we can cite research data on this, 95% of our behavior is governed by this mindset. So in the mastermind program for a year, we will spend, and we do spend time unbundling this. What's in play here in order to actually better understand and then leverage how do we get where we want to go? Human beings have mindset. Companies have mindset. It's called culture. Okay. And most cultures and organizations were developed organically. They weren't developed with intention. And they become reified. They become set in concrete. Now, here's where this gets to be interesting. And then I use the word imagination right along that line, demarcation line between spirit and mindset. Spirit is the force that creates. And it's always looking for greater expansion and expression. And this has nothing to do with religion or any of that stuff. It's just a fact of life. When you look at a tree, yeah, yeah, you've got an acorn. You look at that acorn and you don't see an oak tree, but that oak tree is there. It's just looking for ways to express so that it can become fulsome in its life cycle. That's what spirit's about. What's that kernel? Every organization was founded on some kernel that looks for fulsome expression. What limits it is mindset. What limits it is people's behaviors around, well, we've always done it this way before, so let's just continue to do it that way. That sort of stuff comes into play. Innovation, creativity gets squashed. That line of imagination is the gateway. Imagination is the gateway into the spirit. I mean, Carl Jung, the philosopher, talked about this. If you want to be able to tap into your imagination, into your spirit, you use your imagination. So when we're looking at highly effective leaders, these are leaders that illuminate possibility, things that were never thought of before. And then they have questions around, how do we make this so? Is this something that would be useful? They use the imagination. And it's not predicated on current reality. It's not predicated on what we did before. It's what's that future state look like for who we can be, what we can do, what we can bring to market that's never been thought of before. That's where you get juicy behavior. That's where it gets really exciting. And that's what we're looking to do here. So we're going to unbundle this in some detail over the course of the next 5 days. Now, this universe sits on a foundation, and that's where the 4 pillars come in.
Nice segue. So in the 4 pillars, I know we've done this. So when Blaine's talking about mindset, spirit, and imagination, there are from prior experiences over the years, there are a lot of models that we're aware of that we can go and apply to a business. And this is a structure that I've spent a good 30 plus 40 years focusing on. And it's in its simplest statement is in the very first pillar is always trust and autonomy. And trust is a 4-part action. I have to trust me, and we'll be talking about trust this week, and I have to trust you, and you have to trust yourself, and you trust me. So trust builds that framework, creates that, and you can read this as faster than I can read it to you, builds that framework so that we can move our organization and mindset spirit into autonomy. And autonomy, in its simplest term, is a willingness to try. Autonomy is I'm going to trust you to try, and you're going to be willing to try. And we're going to build that based on communication and transparency. We're going to make sure that we're aligned and that we're communicating openly, candidly, and that we're doing it with candor. And in that action, that will move us towards shared goals, because communication creates confidence. Confidence creates, or clarity creates confidence. So as all of these come together, that gives us the ability to not only create, to reinforce trust and autonomy, but to put a pin in a structure underneath it that reinforces that, so that we're working towards shared goals. We're working towards that shared for the sake of what? Growth and innovation in its simplest statement is that willing for continuous learning. I have never ever executed on a plan that went the way I thought it was going to go. I'm looking for that plan. If anybody has one, I would love to have that plan, but I've never executed on a plan that actually went the way I thought it was going to go. And that means that we're continuously learning. We're willing to get up every day and move towards success, which is starting over, moving towards our plan. And encouraging our teams to take risks, encouraging our teams to experiment and try new possibilities on autonomy, communication, transparency, and systems of accountability. You'll hear me say this several times throughout the week, is not a Trello board, is not a spreadsheet, is not a project management software. Those things are important and they help you see where you are. But an accountability, systems of accountability, is an alignment commitment that we together as a team, leaders and team, that we are all aligned and we understand the organizational goals are for the sake of what. And we have a mechanism in which we're going to measure progress, that we're going to address challenges, and that we're going to maintain momentum together. And that's our accountability together, which is based on trust, fundamentally, which is vulnerability. So that's the four pillars, and we'll be working in this as we go through the days and apply the lessons to it. But the two models we want to make sure we provided at least a good structure behind. Take a breath.
So, yeah, what we've done right up to now is foundational. So Dolan said right at the very beginning, you're going to hear us talking more today than at any other point in this 5 days.
Yeah.
Necessary to get some, some components in place here. So we've got, ways to reference back and forth here. Where we're going now is we're going to be putting you into some breakout rooms that are going to be talking or organized around two key components here that are useful to understand, because we want to have you make some distinctions about how you actually go about leading an organization and leading the people in your organization. And these
Yeah.
two things, you can read the slide just as well as anybody else can here. But I want to talk about them in this context. Motivation, traditional leadership and management. I'll just kind of combine those two, real quickly here. Leadership and management will oftentimes organize itself around, how do we get people to move? How do we get people to do things around this thing that's called motivation? Carrot and stick. Let's provide an incentive out there. Okay. Yeah. Hit the target, you get this. You miss the target, you get that. Okay. So motivation requires that I keep coming back to the trough. I've got to continue to figure out ways to keep my people motivated. Now, here's the problem with motivation as the singular focus from a leader's perspective, is the lack of emotional engagement. The lack of emotional engagement. I will, I'll get motivated by something because, I get a paycheck. That's fine. I'm motivated to keep my job. Okay, so that's the stick part of it. Or I might be motivated because I'd like to take that holiday that's being promised if I hit that target. But that's uh, yeah, it doesn't, there's not any staying power with it, I guess is the way I would talk about it. So motivation is external and it needs to continuously be reinvented. Inspiration is different. When we're looking at co-creating, influencing in order to co-create. Co-creation is an inspired act. It lives inside me for the sake of what? Why does this matter?
Yep.
But when I can tap into that question, why does this matter to you? When you can tap into why does it matter to you, that is sustainable. That is sustainable over time, because that's something that I now think of as being meaningful to me, and there is an emotional connection to it. So if we're looking at putting together an organization and a team that has a high likelihood of being emotionally engaged in what we're doing, inspiration, not motivation, is where we want to work. And that's not to take anything away from motivation. Yeah, both of these things are very valid, but the kind of leadership that we're looking at
Right.
has to do with understanding the power of inspiration and understanding how to actually access it and then leverage it. That's where we're going with this. And it starts with you first. Yeah, people give me what they perceive I'm willing to settle for. They never give me what I'm asking for. I want you to just think about that for a moment from a leadership
Yes.
perspective. People will give me what they perceive I'm willing to settle for. They will never give me what I'm asking for. Now, if they're giving me what I'm asking for, it's because they perceive that that's what I'm going to settle for. Okay, I'll just kind of, acknowledge that.
It's a
But
good.
the settling piece comes from inside. Okay, the settling piece comes from inside. Well, and you'll hear this in the language and the stories that are told in an organization. Well, I can't do that because we don't have money. Well, you're right. We don't have the capital. I guess we're going to have to take that off the table. Okay. If you have inspiration in place of for the sake of what, that story, it doesn't hold water. Well, I
Exactly.
know we don't have capital right now. Let's find a way to make this happen anyway, because it's inspirational to me. That possibility lives in my emotional body. I can't not move towards that. That's where you get innovation. That's where you get people that are emotionally engaged.
Yeah.
That's a big distinction.
Yeah. I love those distinctions because it's inside the body of motivation that this too shall pass lives.
Yeah. Yep.
Inside the body of motivation, this too shall pass.
This
So
too shall pass. Yeah,
yeah,
they went to charm school and now we have to deal with it.
exactly. What the heck? So let's share. I'm going to share a worksheet with everybody, and I'm going to put it into the chat. It's a PDF. And if you could, let's see. I'll pick a couple of Barry and Mr. Caskey or Diane or Susie. Can you let me know, or Jean, let me know that you were able to grab that PDF and
Got it.
open it up. And you don't have to stand on principle. You can come off a mic and just say, "Yep, got it. Great, thanks, Bill.
Good.
So good to see you, man." All right. So in this, we're gonna want to start with. Do we want to do this in groups, Blaine, or we want to do
Yeah,
this?
let's do this in groups. Yeah, just
Yeah,
let's get
we're gonna
people
do the
talking to each other.
we're gonna do the first part of the top half of it because we haven't talked about the bottom half, which is what inspires you to lead, what motivates you, what are your core values, and how does your personal purpose align with your organization's mission? So I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Now, this is first thought, best thought. I mean, obviously these questions are pretty deep and rich.
Quick,
Yeah, but we're not going to do deep and rich. We're just going to go first thought, best thought, just to kind of get some exposure to it.
very quick. And I am going to,
Barbara, thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow.
thanks, Barbara. Create the rooms and I'm going to set them up. You think 10 minutes, 5 minutes?
Let's do 7.
7? I love that
7.
number.
Let's do
7 is a good
7.
number. 7's a good number. And I'm going to create, somehow or another, it only gave me 2 rooms. I'm going to recreate my rooms. I'm going to make
Do
3
3.
rooms.
Yeah, do 3.
I'm going to recreate my rooms here. All right. I'm going to drop us into the rooms. We encourage us to spend some time together on this. I'm going to move. There we go. All right. I think we got everybody ready to go. We'll take 7 minutes as per Mr. Bartlett, and we'll come right back. That's a good number. Here we go.
Alma, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
There we go.
And I think they get a minute to wrap everything up, if I remember how that works.
Yeah. Yeah. 60 seconds and everybody will be right back in here, or less now, probably 15, 20 seconds.
And Mark said he's watching and learning our process. Okay.
We should just start with an apology, Mark. Just straight up. Uh, Blaine and I have a lot of fun doing this together, so it's hard for
Welcome
us to do
back,
this and
folks.
keep a
Welcome
straight
back.
face. Welcome back.
Now, we know that was a short period of time. And again,
Goodness.
today, we gave you less
Yes.
than what you're going to get tomorrow. Yeah, because
Yeah.
we're going to be talking less tomorrow for sure.
Please.
So, if you're not having fun, what the heck,
I know. I know.
And we're having fun, so I hope you guys are too.
I
So
know,
let's jump
seriously.
into this. The bottom half of that worksheet, we're going to assign to you, we're going to invite you to actually work on that tonight or today. And that'll be part of what we'll debrief on tomorrow when we come back. Okay. So it's a worksheet. Now, again, referencing what Dolan said right at the beginning, you're going to get all of this stuff bundled together in a playbook at the end of the on Friday. And the intent with these breakout sessions is not to go, vociferously deep. Vociferously deep.
That's
It's
a good word.
to kind of prime the pump to start thinking a little bit about some stuff here. How would this apply to what you're doing? How would this apply to what your team is doing, your organization is doing? Those are some of the thoughts that we'd like you to just kind of percolate with as you start, kind of trying to answer some of these questions and seeing what comes up for you. There's no right or wrong answers to any of them for sure. It's
Right.
just an exploration. Yeah, that's what we're looking at doing here. And speaking of explorations, we've got a one slide here that I think is going to be useful. Who are you? Diogenes wanders the the earth looking for an honest man out there with his lantern. The question, who am I? Who am I? Is a quintessential existential question. Who am I? This is also true of your team. Who are we? How I answer the question informs everything. Now, what's interesting about this question, it's the core of one's, again, you can read the slide here. It's a core of identity. I am. What's important about this question, I am, is anything that gets answered after it, the words I am, begin to lock in. And when we're talking about that 95% of mindset, a lot of I am is generated in that that subconscious domain that actually, creates a lot of mischief in our lives. Another way to come at this is to think about, I'm not the kind of person, who, fill in the blank. I'm not the kind of person who, and I was playing with this,
Oh, that's
just
interesting.
Nokia as an example of this.
Mhm.
The over the course of the 12 years, I had a number of different program coordinators that I worked with at Nokia, and one of them was just, she was very buttoned down, and I said, we were actually in Australia doing a program, and I was addressing this question of I am. And I looked at her and said, I'll bet you don't dance on tables, do you? She looked at me, deer in a headlight. What do you mean I don't dance on tables? I'm not the kind of person that would ever dance on tables. Well, if you did, what might that do? And yeah, she actually kind of took the challenge on. And at the end of the end of the program's kind of
Wow.
celebration party at the end, I guess, she actually got up on a table and danced, and she had a ball. And it broke the ice for a whole lot of people. And I mean, it was just fascinating. But the point here is we are limited not by who we think we are, we're limited by who we think we're not. And this question I am begins to open the window a little bit into how do I answer this question? Who am I? Where's the governor? What's the limits? All of that stuff starts to come into play. And as a leader, I set the ceiling on where my organization is going to go. It will never go past where I have gotten. This question of I am is actually a leverage question. When I begin expanding the sense of who I am, I start making it possible for other things to be exhibited in my organization. It makes it possible for people to begin to do things that they never thought they could do because they never thought that they were that kind of person. Yeah, people give me what they perceive I'm willing to settle for.
Yep.
Here's where the ceiling is. Here's where the ceiling is.
Yeah.
And Gene, I'm thinking about you and interacting with a boss. I'm not the kind of person who would, kind of fill in the blank around that. If you were, how might you do that with elegance so that the ceiling got lifted? And by elegance, I'm talking about minimal unintended consequences. And there's always going to be consequences for actions, but minimal unintended consequences. And one of the metrics that we use when we're looking at leadership development is can we do this with elegance? Minimal unintended consequences.
Yeah.
So that's something to play with. So this question of I am, this is part of the homework that we're going to give you tonight, is wrestle with this question just a little bit and see what you come up with.
Yeah, it's on the bottom. It's all on the bottom half of the worksheet. And one of the things I'll encourage everyone. So we all develop habits, and one of the habits that I do every day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, is I have an I am statement that goes into my thinking for the day. And the I am statement determines who I am tending to be, and who I am showing up as today. And that's my focus. And a lot of times I've got to go back to it because I can get to 3 o'clock in the afternoon and realize I'm not that person. So understanding that I am is not I am this and that is who I am.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
all made up.
who am I am today? Who am I am going to this meeting? Who I am with my children? Who I am as a parent, as a grandfather? Those things show up. So I would encourage us when you do that exercise in the worksheet to think about it and then transpose that into a daily action. What does that look like on a daily basis? What is your I am statement for the day?
Who do I need to be in order to have what I say I want to have? Who do I need to be? It's not what do
Yeah.
I need to do? Who
What
do
do
I
I
need
gotta
to be?
what do I gotta do? So that's
So,
our homework for
yep.
tonight.
And we are right at the 75-minute mark coming up. We got 2 minutes to give you a couple of closing things here. We have got a LinkedIn group that you are all invited to participate in. We'll send you
Thank
the information on this, but it'll be a repository for all kinds of resource materials,
Speaking.
in addition to what we're going to be offering up here. And feel free to join that. We would actually encourage you to join that. It's a community. We're setting it up as a community, a learning community. So that is something that you can anticipate getting in the after session notes that'll be coming up.
Or in the chat right now.
Or in the chat. Oh, did you just put it in the chat?
I
There it
just put it in the
is.
chat. That was a good prompt.
I
We're in
love
the
that.
chat right now.
Just join that group on
It's a
LinkedIn,
private group.
and it's a private group. We will click yes when we see your name.
I'll
So
invite you for that.
you are invited. And Isabella, I loved. Yeah, what's her name? Yeah, what's your what? Oh, she's a cutie. Your daughter? Yeah. Okay.
There we go.
We are at time, folks. Thank you very much for today. Again, more conversation and talking coming from Dolan and I today than you're going to get at the rest of, for the rest of the week. I promise.
Golly, yes.
Yeah.
And on a note of gratitude, thank you for being here. 1,000 other places you could have been. Grateful for you to spend time with Blaine and I. We're honored and privileged to be able to do this with you. Have a great rest of your day. It's Monday. Enjoy your Monday.
It's Monday. Have a good Monday, and we will see
tomorrow.
you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Take care.
Thank you. A quick question, guys. Are you still hanging on for a second?
Yeah, we'll hang out, Joe.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's just for people who missed today, what's your recommendation?
Yeah, we had about 7 registration came in after we started. So we're going to be sending a note out to everybody. They can absolutely join. The videos will be made available so they won't be behind on anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll make it
Okay.
all available to him, Doug. Great question, Doug. No, we'll make it available to him. It was fun, and thank you, by the way, for the note that came out this morning about the challenge, and we did see a bunch of people suddenly show up. So
Yeah. Okay. I'm
So-
glad they can participate. Anybody else? So
oh
thanks,
yeah,
guys.
yeah, yeah. We'll
Great.
make sure we'll keep an eye on them throughout the week and make sure. So
Yeah.
Great information
And
today.
let's get some time on the
Thank you, sir.
calendar, Doug, either today or tomorrow, just to kind of begin to flesh out next steps on